It did not start when I was a kid, because the most I would do when I was a kid is look at the night sky and be amazed. I grew up in a part of Romania that's not the most popular. I used to go to my grandma's village, and I'll be honest with you, spend summers there. And in the night, it was breathtaking. You know, there was no light pollution, and looking at the sky, it almost felt like a ceiling of stars because of the low light pollution. And you know, I've kept that with me. I've always been fascinated by the creativity of this universe, of, you know, things like our body or anything in nature. You'll see correlations from a little bacteria to galaxies. So I've always kind of tried to find these and show people that, you know, life isn't that simple. You're not alone. You're not, you know, kind of an error. So what kind of drove me towards astrophotography was the idea of kind of showing people something that's much bigger than ourselves, something that is quantifiably huge. You know, some nebulas are hundreds and thousands of light years across, which we can't even fathom. But the idea is that the fact that we can see them from here, the fact that we can show people, maybe will make somebody's day better, maybe will inspire a new younger person to get into this, get a career, and maybe it's going to speed up space exploration. Because as it stands right now, we're not doing much, right? I think we're kind of stalling and still going for the old chemical rocket that pulls 2 pounds and burns 10,000 gallons of fuel a second or something. So for me, that was my inspiration, was the most important thing. It was a monetary gain. I don't promote anything. I don't want to get any sponsorships. I really don't kind of see that as something, even in the remote future. Even if I'm successful, to be honest, I won't look at it. But it started more and more when my wife, actually, who's a landscape photographer, was starting to get into Milky Way imagery. So I've never seen the Milky Way live. You know, when you see it on your DSLR after 30, 40-second exposure, it blows your mind to see it. And I started playing around with her DSLR. I started taking shots of the moon with a teleconverter, so at like 1,000 millimeters, and I started getting more and more amazed. And with some Photoshop knowledge that I've kind of gathered since I was a kid, I processed it and I was really impressed. So I decided to get my first telescope. But my story isn't a typical story. I did not go out and get a small refractor and DSLR and started doing it. Well, I got a 10-inch Ritchie Chrétien 2,000 millimeter f8, which is a very big telescope for regular people and not just beginners. So I got that. I found out that would work. Again, I was really conflicted with the stuff I would see and hear on the internet, just because a lot of it was the same model. For me, even in my daily job, I don't like to look at what certain people are doing and say, I'll do that. I always want to challenge it, because nothing is ever going to change if we all do the same thing. It's going to be boring. So I started playing around the telescope. I took some incredible shots at the moon, but because everything that was out there was noise and really irrelevant, it was really hard to make such a large telescope work properly. And you know, I've seen people on YouTube that are famous struggle to get the 2,000 millimeter telescope working. I won't name them, but it's pretty funny. So I started learning. I actually started experimenting with new technology that I could find, specifically imaging software. Building software, I was very depressed to see things like SGP, which looks like it's from the 90s, designed by an engineer who really wasn't looking to do it. And I started trying to understand what's the best workflow, because in my job, the actual skills don't matter. You know, it doesn't matter how good you are. It matters what process and what workflow you follow. So I was building my one workflow slowly. It took me about a year to get everything working properly. And it took me a year to understand what I need to image with. Luckily, there's a lot of great people in the astrophotography community, you know, I'll say Cloudy Nights, and other places that are always there to advise you. Some are, you know, telling you to buy $20,000 mounts, but you know, that's just technically it's not a bad suggestion, but in reality, not everybody can afford it. So then I started having some success with imaging. I started getting my workflow to actually work. And now I've expanded to 2 mounts. I have a wide field mount, a wide field setup, and a rich field setup with a 12-inch Ritchie Chrétien at 2,000 millimeters f6.4. So it's kind of clicking. Now that the weather is kind of cleared up in California, we're not burning anymore. It's actually very satisfying night by night to kind of see these images come through, and it never gets old. No matter how much you've been doing it, when you're imaging a new object, you're like a kid at Christmas. You're always going to stay there to see the first fit come in. You're always going to stretch it. You're always going to look to see what's the detail. Luckily, the software I use called the SkyX does automatic framing on a planetarium. So when I image, I actually know what my frame is almost, and I can do mosaics and other stuff.